So in this video, I thought I'd talk about some of the resources and references that I use for to gather my opinions and thoughts. So for daily news, I usually like to listen to Yahoo Finance Live, usually, market coverage throughout the day. So that's kind of what I listen to throughout. Marketwatch, that's really good for any articles or you want to look up like a specific index or stock. It's just a website. It's pretty cool. I like it not having delay time for quotes, because if you search on Google or a lot of the sites, the prices might be delayed by like 15 minutes. So that's kind of why I like it. Zero Hedge, this website has a lot of many different articles analyzing the economy. So, and finally Bloomberg, pretty popular news network. Other choices, there's CNBC, but I feel like they're pretty biased at times. So that's kind of where I left it. When it comes to like podcasts and interviews, honestly, the whole reason why I kind of got into this whole thinking or this, I guess, a whole, is really from Peter Schiff. I kind of watched some of his videos, and that's kind of what got me into thinking about a lot of things. And I really appreciate his thoughts on a lot of different parts of the economy, and I do believe what he's been saying, like all the way from 2003 and throughout, is going to happen. And that's kind of what got me into this whole camp. Thomas Sowell, I really like his perspective, where he was a Marxist when he was younger, and as he worked within the government in the labor of statistics, and as he worked throughout, he realized that, hey, there's something wrong about this, and he became a subscriber of the capitalist idealist. Milton Friedman, obviously, he does really good analogies and explanation and multiple debates in many instances. So the next one is someone from Taiwan. I really like how he talks about a lot of different areas using different interesting stories. I'm sorry for like those who don't have, or don't speak Chinese or understand it. This one, like, I would try to, I guess, summarize it as the best as I can. Mike Maloney, he has pretty good graphics and videos on what he thinks is about to happen. This is like from a while back too, especially on the ones like how the central bank and Congress is going to continuously stimulate the economy until, the end. Ray Dalio, and through the Bridgewater Associates, he is very interesting in comparison to Buffett, where Warren Buffett doesn't like to diversify because his mentality is that, why should I spend my money in areas that is going to underperform? So that's really interesting. Ray Dalio, on the other hand, he likes to diversify because his idea is that if he can generate the same amount of return but reduce risk, that's where he's driving his value. So, really interesting. And finally, Real Vision Finance, they have really good videos as well. The only thing I would disagree on is ideas and thoughts on crypto, but that's a story for another day. Let's look at some of the macroeconomics data that I kind of look at. So obviously there's the Fed, which is Federal Reserve, the US Central Bank, looking at their balance sheet numbers, and also the M2, so money supply. And then there's the Bank of Canada, same thing, balance sheet, money supply. Just really trying to see if they're increasing, like buying more things, and what's the kind of impact on the money supply and circulation. Then there's the US National Debt Clock. That website is pretty cool. It has a lot of different moving parts. I don't know how they're getting their data from, but hey, props to them. US Treasury and Canada bond yields. So this is kind of interesting seeing where the yields are getting pushed to. Obviously, all the central banks are trying to push yields lower so the federal government can spend more, because effectively they're the only, like one of the main players that are still buying bonds at these yields, as the whole yield curve is below their targeted inflation rate of 2%. So meaning you're buying, the second you buy a bond, or whoever's holding it to maturity is losing money. Who in the world is buying these bonds? It's the central banks. And finally, this is the US dollar index. US dollar is kind of the only currency that's still relatively strong comparing to how much monetary stimulus they have done. And it's also one of the indices that are indicators that I'm looking at for inflation, because as long as US dollar index is relatively high, I think inflation is going to stay at bay, because the foreign investors' incentives to sell the dollar and sell treasuries won't be as high. About precious metals space. Obviously, we have Rick Rule, CEO of Sprott Inc. I think it's like US Asset Management. So Sprott Inc. has a few ETF products. They have, and specifically in the space for mining companies, they have the miner ETF. They also have the junior miner. They also have physical trusts, the gold ETF trust, the silver ETF trust, and gold and silver ETF trust. So he provides a very detailed analysis of the space itself, rather than more of like macro. Obviously, he still has the macro knowledge, but he has very in-depth experience with the space. So that's kind of what I like about it. Next up, we have Eric Sprott, Sprott Money. Sprott Money doesn't do any like asset management, but they sell physical. Even though you can have you can buy physical through them, but also have them stored as well. The annual fee is 1%. So, that's not too bad, I think. And Eric Sprott, another thing I like getting from him is his weekly wrap up, where he talks about how it's going for the week, and also he suggests like a bunch of junior stocks. So I kind of subscribe to that. And I've just been like buying everything that he kind of puts his money in. Like, I mean, if the guy is putting in like 5 mil here and there, like I think I can bet a few $100. And I think so far I've obviously there are some unrealized losses, some unrealized gains, but if I net all of them together, I think I'm still ahead. David Brady, he's really good in terms of providing technical analysis. And recently he talked about how soon we should be seeing a pullback in the precious metals, and he's like one of the only ones that, as a precious metals bull, that is actually going against the consensus. So that's something I really appreciate. CME Group for futures. This is good to look at like paper, gold and silver. And recently, like whoever is on the short side cannot keep the open interest down. So that's kind of one of the bullish signs for the space. Junior Mining News Network. That one's really good if you really want to try to gamble and speculate, because junior mining stocks, it can go to zero, or it would be the highest performing group normally in the precious metals bull market. And another thing under mining topics, you can click on Sprott, and that kind of pops up every time when Eric Sprott makes a investment in one of these juniors, and that's kind of where I get his picks. Obviously after he's bought them, but I just kind of follow his bet. Kitco News, they attend many events and they have a lot of different interviews, so I kind of like what they have. Investor News Network, they do, I think, a weekly news, and they also have like a website, and they cover uranium as well, and also the cannabis space. Finally, Palisade Radio, they have like many different guests that come on providing different perspectives. So these are all the different sources that I get my knowledge or information from regarding the precious metal space. Finally, let's talk about some movies. I feel like I should have moved this higher up in the presentation because, movies, that's the exciting part. The Housing Bubble by bubblefilm.com. They talk about how the 2008 bubble was staged all the way from 1920s, I think even earlier, I'm not too sure. Kind of forgot the main details of it, but it goes in detail into the very basic economics and like how money's created, how a bubble was created. So I really enjoy that movie. Sequel's coming out soon, The Bigger Bubble. That's supposed to be about what's happening now, this current bubble that we're living through. The Big Short, pretty popular movie. It has a few examples of people who made a lot of money shorting the market in 2008 and how they came about to those opportunities, and kind of makes it pretty funny. The Inside Job, this one's really like technical and in depth, where it's still talking about the 2008 crisis, but it's in more details and with some focus of Lehman Brothers and also the Fed bailouts. Next, we have Panic, the Untold Story of 2008 Financial Crisis. This is done in the perspective of Hank Paulson, I think it was Secretary of Treasury, Timothy Geithner, the New York Fed chair, and obviously Ben Bernanke, the Federal Reserve chair, who famously started the QE. And next we have Wolf of Wall Street. This one, I'm not sure which era it's from, but it's hilarious. And it kind of shows you kind of the trader mentality back in the days where it was still commission, not like nowadays where it's fee based. So it's a lot harder to earn trader income. And finally, there's Enron, talking about like a big company on obviously accounting scandal in the midst of the dot-com bubble, the smartest guys in the room. So these are all really interesting movies if you're interested in knowing how kind of documentary of what happened in the past crises.